Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson, how we doing? We're February, Super Bowl's in the books. I wore my Titans tribute, My World shirt. What a ball game. What a weekend. I'm super hyped for this time of year. Big, April Fool's show. Don't be a fool. We got the unveil of the logo in baseball. I'm going to just keep hitting you with everything but the topic today, just to get under your skin, if that's okay.
Oh, hey, I love it. I'm totally cool with it. And I want to mention, supershowlive.com. You teased it. April 1st, Friday. This is going to be the couple of Hall of Famers that you know and love here on your podcast every single week. Double J, Jeff Jarrett, Eric Bischoff, myself, and who's the third man? And let me just give you a spoiler. It ain't who you think it is. And we're going to be announcing that this coming Monday. So 6 days from the day as you're listening to this, we will make the reveal. Let me also give you a spoiler. It will immediately sell out. So if you haven't already, cruise on over to supershowlive.com and pick up your tickets. Now, what are you buying tickets for? Well, there's two opportunities. You can do the VIP, a little happy hour, if you will, starts at 5 p.m. Central. The show time is 7 p.m. But when we reveal the third man next week, it will sell out immediately. And the reason it will is because you're going to get an opportunity to fellowship and get your photo and get your autograph and get a surprise gift and get preferred VIP seating, and VIPs will be gone just like that. Guaranteed next Monday when we make this announcement. So this could be your last chance to go to supershowlive.com and pick it up. Now, once VIP's sold out, and it will, then you definitely want to grab a general admission seat, because we have a guest and we have a story that everyone is going to be talking about. And it's not who you think it is. Go pick up tickets now at supershowlive.com. How did I do, Jeff?
Conrad, that is rare form. That's that's authentic. That's classic. That is Conrad 101, if you will. And you were speaking the truth. And I did half-ass interrupt you, but I pulled back real quick because I said, man, he's on a roll. You know, our good friend and fellow stage member for this night, Mr. Bischoff, what does he always say? Lesser than? I'm going to let you say it.
Yeah. He says in business, you have to make a decision. You can either be less than, different than, or better than. And this is going to be different than all the other live shows we've ever done. And I think just based on me playing half-ass Booker on the phone with you the other day and saying, here's what I envision, I think it's going to be better than any live show.
Dude, it's very, very 35 plus years of promoting. It's very, very hard to check two of those boxes.
Yes.
Better than and different than. So it's for sure going to be unique, and I cannot wait. Conrad, I'm telling you, we've had I've talked to you more than anybody in the world, but man, it's that season, you know. It's January, you get rocking and rolling, and as wrestling fans know, it is Royal Rumble, and then Rumble rides right into Mania, and that's kind of the path we're on. So, did I hear you say that it will sell out? I'm just asking. Did you say that?
100%. This will sell out. When this is revealed, a little tiny piece of the internet will melt, and you want to be able to say, "I'm glad I got my tickets. I'm glad I listened to that Mortgage Shield, Conrad, the mortgage guy, the other day when he was on Double J's podcast telling me it was going to sell out. He told me,
don't be a fool on April Fools.
Supershowlive.com. Listen, we're going to have a lot of fun and talk about who it is and what it is and all that next week. But by the time you hear that, the shit will be sold out. So go grab your tickets right now. Supershowlive.com.
Can I say this? And I usually don't like to get into this because we like to talk granular and wrestling stories and all this, but I'd like to say real quick, on my Twitter is my email, jj4jarrett@gmail.com. I've had some different folks reach out, and the reason I'm saying this is go to that. So you don't have to memorize it today, but Podcast at the Plate, Conrad. I've had probably 5 conversations today with minor league ball teams. And it's basically, if you want a live show at your minor league ballpark, reach out and contact. Cause the guy goes, "Hey man, how can I get in touch with you?" And I'm like, "How can I pass along?" I said, "Hey, my email is look, just fire away. It's not some secret, email address." So, if you're listening to this, reach out because there's some minor league teams and, new email addresses. Conrad's what I'm going at, but, we're going to be taking that live podcast on the show. We are lining that up in Wisconsin, out on the West Coast. We're looking at a 3 or 4 day swing. So reach out, Conrad. Podcast at the Place, live podcast. It's not no April Fool's show, but it is a podcast show.
You really got your email in your bio on your Twitter. Is that real?
Check it out.
I mean, I'm kind of impressed, I guess. Like I know I do that. But yeah, there it is. JJ4Jarrett. Like that's your real email. Like when you said it, I thought it was a gimmick email, and I'm like, no, that's the one I use. Yeah. So Jeff Jarrett or someone who looks like him and thinks like him and talks like, I don't know what they're doing in Hendersonville. I know they ain't got Wi-Fi figured out, but they might have cloning. So,
Oh no.
No. You sound great now, but I'm just saying you had to call Mr. Comcast directly. And you said, "Hey, Mr. Comcast."
He came out, and I'll tell you this much. He's a Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lawler fan. I'm just going to leave it right there. So he is a Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lawler fan in the same sentence. So he was here till about 8:30 at night.
So so you got Comcast, but it turned into a meet and greet.
And I'll do it all day, every day.
Apparently,
happy to do that. Got to make Conrad happy. We're at test my internet speed, 70 Mbps or whatever.
It's still not what you're paying for, but it's better. It's better than the one you had before. You know, here's a little peek behind the curtain. A couple of weeks ago, we're trying some new technologies over here and doing some, some beta testing, if you will.
Oh, Lord.
And I had just done 2 other shows with our engineer that same day. So now we get on for show number 3. And buddy, it looks like 1996 14K dial up internet. Like we're dialing into AOL to see what the rumors are, bro.
Can phone.
And all of a sudden, instead of this beautiful 4K picture that we've had, as we talk to our other guests, now we've got just old pixelated Jeff up there. And I said, "Jeff, you got a problem with your internet." And I mean, he turned into a cartoon character with a Southern drawl who was not happy. I mean, it was like Foghorn. It was like Foghorn Leghorn. "I do declare you're not gonna disparage my internets. When the man from the Comcast came into my dwelling here on the beautiful lake here in Hendersonville, Tennessee, God's country, if you will. Oh, he said to me, 'This is the best setup I've seen. You should be mighty fine proud of the rig that you have here for the cast of the pod that you participate in. The internet's is outstanding. So it can't be me. It ain't on my end.'"
That's a little embellishment.
And I said, "Well, Jeff, just go to Test My Speed. Where would one find the ability to test thine speed?" "Well, just type it in Google, Test My Speed." "Well, what would I click then?" "Literally anything. Just click Test My Speed." Literally any of those options will be fine. And then what will it do? Just tell me the number. And it was a 1, not like a gig, like 1 megabyte. And I'm like, Jeff, when I was trying to see what was happening on Nitro in 1996 as a spoiler from, I don't know, HadesWrestling.com, I had faster internet than this. Like my first Alicia Silverstone Photoshop nude loaded faster than this is right now. We got to do better. You got to call Comcast. And he did. And now we got big time internet. This past weekend, bud, you called it. You know, I've made fun. I've poked fun. I've said you're a half-ass handicapper. Get even more from the hottest new podcast going, My World with Jeff Jarrett, over at adfreeshows.com. Let me get granular here for a minute, folks. Not only can you get the entire My World episode library with 0 ads, new episodes come your way each week early, ad-free, and on video starting at just $9 a month. We've also got tons of exclusive My World bonus content waiting for you, plus unique interactive experiences with your old pal, Double J. You get to jump on and ask Jeff questions, and if you joined us in Chicago this year for Top Guy Weekend, you got to hang out the entire weekend. 100% the best value in all of wrestling. Strut on over to adfreeshows.com right now to sign up. You said the Rams would win. Not only did they win, they covered. If I would have taken your betting advice, I would have won money. Instead, I didn't bet anything, and I enjoyed a good game.
What did you say? You enjoyed the hell out of a game.
It was a great game.
Super Bowl. You know, we can't get into our episode until we cover one final topic here.
Stupid ass abyss.
What a moron.
Once again,
a complete moron.
Let me ask you this. How many times did Joe Montana lose in the Super Bowl?
Goose egg.
And Joe Burrow has lost how many times?
0.
Well, now 1. He's lost.
Oh yeah, 1. Yes. I thought how many times he'd been to the Super Bowl. Yes.
Well, here's the thing. I want Joe Burrow to become the new face of the league. I love his swagger. I love his character. I'm all about it. I hope he just dominates and has.
I love the outfit.
The best. Oh, it's phenomenal. Everything about him. It's just hilarious. I love him. He's an entertainer. He's a promoter. He gets it. He's cool. He's checking all my boxes. But don't disparage the good damn name of Joe Montana. Those names should never touch.
Chris Park. I tweeted him yesterday. Yeah, stick with Pac-Man and Witten and the rest of his fantasy football team.
I'll tell you this. I wanted to hit him with a barbed wire baseball bat yesterday just because.
Yeah. Good. And what a bandwagon jumper. He is a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. And all of a sudden, he actually lives in Kentucky. Do you know that, Conrad? He doesn't even live on the Ohio side. He lives on the Kentucky side. So he's a transplant.
Oh, well, listen, that's a lot like Sean Ross Sapp. Sean Ross Sapp lives in a city in Kentucky the size of your left thumbnail. And he's out here, my Bengals. And don't get me wrong. I get it. Listen, he grew up as a basketball. Like, when was the last time the Kentucky football team was worth a damn? I mean, never. So he's just been a basketball guy. He's excited that something cool is happening. And by the way, Burrow has somehow made the Bengals cool again, which automatically should be a Hall of Fame for him. Because, well, they haven't been for a long, long time. But I'm just saying, half of the folks I know in Kentucky are half-ass Bengals fans. And I get it. Listen, there's a lot of folks down here in Alabama who are half-ass Titans fans. And, that just shouldn't be. If you're a real deal Alabama football fan, you don't like shit about Tennessee. Not nary a thing.
Not a damn thing. Okay. Halftime show.
I mean, listen, I got the Iggy on that, and I tried to do a 13-team parlay. It turns out you can't really do that. But a friend of mine said, "Hey man, I just saw the rehearsal for the Super Bowl." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw the whole halftime show." I'm like, the game doesn't start for hours. He's like, "I know." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Oh, I wanted to see what was going on so I could go bet." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure this is illegal. I don't think we can do that." And so anyway, I watched it with bated breath because I had no idea you could bet on dumb stuff like, will Snoop Dogg smoke on stage? What color will Snoop Dogg's shoes be? What type of earrings will whoever the lady was, Mary J. Blige wear? Whatever. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. What type of degenerate is actually voting? Like, you don't bet on that. What are you doing? I thought it was simple. Like, who's going to be the first to score? You could do the coin flip, But I didn't know. It was like, what color are Snoop Dogg's shoes? What color will Eminem's hair be? And I'm like, buddy, I don't think I can actually, no, if you saw it, no, I'm pretty sure this is illegal, so I'm not doing it. But secondly, you need to go to a meeting. You should not be voting on or betting on what color Eminem's hair is.
Let's get to real serious, authentic wrestling stuff. None of that.
Well, hang on. Anyway, the point is yesterday, Casio Kid did a 13-team parlay and won $112. So
good old Casio.
I don't know how you would bet a nickel, but I mean, I guess he did. It was awesome.
Good old Casio. Did you see the meme flying around of Mary J. Blige?
No, but I did see the one of upside down 50 Cent.
Yeah. Mary J. Blige stole my gimmick is what they were saying. There's the thing, but it was, they did I don't know what the,
was she too lip syncing? Was it Road Dogg singing for her too? Cause that would have been awesome.
It was probably, I don't know. I love Mary J. She's good. That was, I hats off to the whole performance. I thought it was awesome.
No, it was super fun. And you know, I don't know why it felt like this year there were only, I don't know, like maybe 2 or 3 good commercials for me where I was like, oh, that was a good one.
To me, it wasn't a commercial year. I've always been, the Budweiser are always good storytellings, but across the board, Doritos, there wasn't any. Yeah, I agree.
And there were a couple that were pretty good. I think
Larry David,
that Liquid Metal or Liquid Death or whatever, just the canned water that they had the kids getting jazzed up on. That was funny.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about why we're here. Of course, we're talking about Final Resolution being in the rear view because now we're against all odds. And we're talking about 2007. So as we're discussing this, it happened 15 years ago. And when we last spoke, we talked about Final Resolution, where we saw Kurt Angle win an Iron Man match over Samoa Joe to become the #1 contender for the now NWA champion, Christian Cage. And this is going to be Kurt's first shot at the NWA title. And I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge right here at the top that as you and I are recording, we have a brand new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Unbelievably, Matt Cardona and his quest to take over the non-WWE wrestling world continues. Last year, he was the king of death matches. This year, maybe he's the damn king of the ring. He is the NWA World Champion. Yes, the same title that Jack Briscoe held, and Harley Race, and Terry Funk, and Dusty Rhodes, and Ric Flair, and now Matt Cardona. Dude, he's something else, man. What a run that our friend Matt is having right now. I was
elated. I'll say that. You know, I'm going to be the ambassador for that Crockett Cup. That's his first title defense here in Nashville, Tennessee. So yeah, it kind of Cardona. It's like the proverbial take the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
Take control of your career. But that means you've got to get in the game, man. I think a lot of young folks should take a lot of notice to how aggressive he is and where he's going and what he's doing. And, you know, the night before he was in Cleveland. So he's humping it. He's working hard, and hats off to the guy. Sincere hats off. And, you know, I was that champion. Look over my left shoulder, Conrad, but you named 7 others except me. So I'm still a 4 horseman, regardless if you want to comment on don't shake your head at me.
Jeff, I was just taking a moment to put over the history of the title, and I named guys. I didn't name one who was younger than 70 something. So I'm just saying that. Yeah. I mean, I didn't say also, you know, Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana.
I was going to say,
and the Colorado Kid. I didn't mention any of those guys.
You didn't.
Hey, I want to mention too, tickets are on sale right now at NWATIX.com. The Crockett Cup is back. It's going to be at the fairgrounds in Nashville, Tennessee on March 19th and March 20th. I will not be able to attend on the 19th, Jeff Rowe, but myself and Casio Kid and probably a boatload of my friends are going to ride up on the 20th and check it out, because I haven't seen wrestling at the fairgrounds in years. And I don't know, man, something about live wrestling at the fairgrounds just, and that works for me. So pick it up. It's NWATIX. Jeff Jarrett will be there March 19th, March 20th. The Crockett Cup coming to Nashville, and Matt Cardona's the champ. That's not a fever dream. That's real life in 2022.
Love it. Absolutely love it. But so back to the episode.
Yeah, when we last saw Kurt, it was Kurt Angle versus Christian, and it was maybe not the top of the cards a few years prior to this in the WWF. But now it's headlining here in the NWA/TNA. We're coming off the show. TNA is got a unique opportunity to take advantage of a Monday without professional wrestling. What we're talking about is that dreaded time of the year, and it happens every year, where February 12th comes around and there's a damn dog show. And unbelievably, Sci-Fi, which is usually the backup, like it was a few weeks ago when we had the Olympics, well, they have a marathon scheduled. And this would be one day after the Against All Odds pay-per-view. It's really a unique situation for you guys because as a wrestling fan, we've been conditioned. Well, if it's not on this channel, it's on that channel. But by God, there's wrestling on TV somewhere on Monday. Do you guys go to Spike, or does Spike come to you with an idea?
You know, I was racking my brain on this. I don't know exactly who made the first call, but do remember the discussions in that, look, it's really only one Monday. And here's kind of the DNA of Spike at the time. I don't want to say they were the UFC network, but there was a lot of UFC content on there. So it was, and they had CSI. I mean, they had their regular content and movies, and, you know, they're the Paramount network now, but they were still always owned. So lots of movies and all that, but I don't know exactly who called who, but we knew, okay, we do have a window, but what's the real upside to spending a lot of money, candidly, to produce a show that's a one-off? It's really an awareness, but you don't really want to just run that best of. So it was a little bit of a juggling act or a balancing act, or how do we make it compelling content and we're happy and Spike's happy, but you keep the budget down. So yeah, it was an opportunity. And the other thing was, it had to be this is another thing. It had to be a tape show because pay-per-view was on Sunday. And so the Against All Odds, the episode we're talking about today, the following day is this Monday we're talking about. So how are we going to create? So we kind of had to have I don't say a current best of, but that's the best way to describe it.
Well, so either way, it's a smart play because you want to be able to showcase some wrestling and take advantage, really of the forfeit by WWE to just give up that Monday. So it's a tape special. By the way, I want to mention, how's this for a tease? Next month, we'll be covering Destination X, and then we'll also discuss when the WWE had to move to Thursday. And that actually means they're going head to head with TNA, which is kind of fun.
Yep.
Meltzer would say the booking team is trying to come up with a shoot concept to differentiate itself from WWE. The vague idea is having the X Division guys do matches with time limits, similar to the pay-per-view, but have real judges deciding the outcome as a shoot based on who was the best performer in the match. Now that is an outside the box idea. What do you remember about hearing you're going to have people really judge who the best performer was? What?
Look, it's, you know, I'll give Dave, his credit here. He, you know, did some digging, or somebody fed him some stuff, or probably a mixture. We always, and me trying to, I'll call it lead the room or guide the room, I always press the guys. What can we do innovative? What can we do new? What is different? What hasn't been done? We can't get completely out of bounds here because it just won't make sense. But what can we do to, I don't want to say push the envelope from a shock jock type deal, but push the envelope. So I remember these kind of ideas being discussed. You know, we always had, okay, just to put this in context, this is a 1 hour show. We were still a 1 hour on Spike. So we were big time in the growing, and I probably overemphasize, all of us did, you know, the minute by minute of, look, we've got to make every minute count. So how do we be different? But, you know, a lot of ideas were talked about in the creative room that never saw the light of day. This one obviously saw the light of the Observer newsletter.
I want to give everybody a little bit of a tease. I came into we'll call it a good situation with a friend of ours, both yours and mine. You've known him and been friends with him a lot longer, but great guy, great friend of the show, but probably shouldn't say his name. But let's just say I've got hundreds of old television formats now from TNA, including some from this era. So we're going to dig through there and see what we can find. And we're going to throw it up over at adfreeshows.com. So if you've ever wanted to see, hey, everybody's always talking about the format and what's segment this and what's segment that. Well, you can actually take a look at that over at adfreeshows.com. That's some pretty cool shit, is it not, Jeff?
Well, stylistically, everybody had a little bit of a different deal. I can remember handwriting it in the Memphis days. That's like my first kind of TV job. My dad had pretty good handwriting, but going out to Dallas or in Memphis, those first handwritten, and then you'd go in there and have the copier. Then obviously as the computer developed and all that. Yeah, the formats were something that everybody's got a little bit of different. Look at WWE, the truck has a different format than is handed out in production meetings. So everybody has a different system. WCW had a different system. Yeah, it is a kind of inside baseball, pretty cool thing to see.
Hypothetically, is that like the last thing that the audience doesn't get to see? I mean, really at this point, most of the audience has listened to enough podcasts or seen enough shoot interviews or read enough books. That feels like one of the last things that is a little kinda taboo. What say you?
What would be fascinating to me, like, in the music business, when you see a set list, but then you see some handwritten notes on a set list for music, then I think it takes another step. When you look at formats today, and even, during this era, we would have, first draft, second draft, third draft, fourth draft, fifth draft, sometimes whatever, final draft. And in a lot of them, you have TBD on this match and TBD on this match. And then you have TBD, this music. I mean, you just have these different little footnotes. And to go back in time now and look at it, you can just sort of see the changes and the ebb and flow of actually in the writing and the drafting, and then getting to the day of the show and then time things. And man, if we had like a executed format with Bob Ryder notes and Keith Mitchell notes, and maybe Jeff Jarrett notes, and maybe a Dutch Mantel and or Vince Russo. Those are, yeah. So it is, I see where you're going with it. If you're a hardcore fan, Conrad, this stuff that you guys post, it's going to be kind of like walking through a museum as you sit down at your computer, like, oh, wow, this is that format. And this is the show that went to it. And this is what was written on the format, but that actually didn't happen. This is go watch the tape back. So
I'm so glad you mentioned the revisions, because I've got all those. So it's a deal where I've got first copy, revision, second copy, third copy. So there's all these different revisions, and you can really see the evolution of a show from when it was first drafted and it was an idea that was first put pen to paper, and then just how it evolved. And it was fascinating to just go through and take a look at them and realize, well, not realize, I mean, you realize a change was made, but you often wonder and say, I wonder why that changed. And so those notes from everyone might be helpful, because now what you're talking about is some of those old movies and, we've seen several over the years where we would see, say, Pulp Fiction. You see it from this character's perspective, but then you see it from that character's perspective. And there was a show a few years ago on cable called The Affair, and you could see things from the wife's perspective and then things from the husband's perspective, and they almost never lined up, but that's the way they remembered it. And that's like real life. If we had you on here telling your version of events of something that happened, and then we had Road Dogg telling the exact same story, it would be different because it's from his perspective. So to your point, sure, the notes would be really fun if you had the handwritten notes, because then you would get, 5 or 6 maybe different takes on the same doggone thing. And then you could have the context of going and watching it and sort of form your own opinion. So we're going to start posting some of those to adfreeshows.com, especially when it coincides with what we're talking about here. I don't know that we can post that. I don't know if we should post that on social media, but we are going to put some over at adfreeshows.com. But let's get back into it and try to get back on track here. We're talking about Against All Odds 2007. It's an interesting time in the business. We got this special we're going to try to put together, since there is no Monday Night Raw the night after this, but it's not all good news. Meltzer would say this: there were more financial cutbacks this week. Many members of the office staff who have their hotels paid for in Orlando were told they could double up and stay at the DoubleTree, or get a single room at a less expensive place. They also eliminated the company shuttle getting people to and from the airport. Now, I'm sure some people read this and are immediately negative. In reality, this is just a necessary evil of running a business. If you're a small business and you're operating on a P&L where, profit and loss actually matters, then you have to make some of these tough decisions. But going to the folks and saying, hey, you got to double up, that is less than ideal. So at least you offered the option of, you just got to stay at a less expensive space. But I would imagine as that may have been to some of the guys, you probably got more pushback about the airport shuttle pickups. Did you not?
Okay, 1 hour show. So that's the revenue coming in. Dean Broadhead, our CEO, all those years, he, I'll say, he got the ass chewings from Dallas regularly, that he's the one that had to keep things, as much as straight and narrow. In my personal life, Conrad, at this time, as I was doing the review, it was very challenging. We're talking January, December of 2007. December, January, February of 2007. Jill passed away in May of this year. So there was a challenge there. Dean, the 1 hour, we had way too many talent for a 1 hour show. I think people can relate to that right now. Just way too many talent. We were doing a lot of juggling acts. But the shuttle and the rooms, and look, it makes for great kind of juicy bits in Meltzer's newsletter, but cutting back the shuttle was this. We made a reservation on these shuttles, Conrad, that, look, Orlando, world's largest, you just don't get on the old Hertz bus and cram 50. You had to have a seat. So we're reserving 8, 10, 12 seats, but I get it. Guys land and they're all together and they say, hey, we're going to go to the gym. Then we're going to go to eat. And then we can go to this place. Then we end up back at the hotel. So we're paying for 12 seats, but 3 are being used like week after week after week. Okay. That's kind of a waste of money. Let's just cut it out altogether. They're going to find their way. They're going to double up. Okay. So you're on your own then. And then in the rooms, most of this was not, I don't think any of it was talent. I may be wrong, but for the most, I think it was production and office staff. And look, we tried to pair folks up, but the reality is those folks would get over to Universal Studios at, let's say a late would be 9 a.m., maybe 10, 8, whatever. And then they stay till midnight. So they're literally in a room for 8 hours, and we would tape Monday and Tuesday. So it was like, guys, we're spending this money. Nobody's ever in their room. Let's figure it out. And, we were trying to grow. So it wasn't easy conversations, but it was one of those ones that, look, the Carters and Panda, they want to see profit. We are getting paid for this show. We can't spend everything we make. That's the bottom line. Let's figure it out. And again, we're going to get into this, but man, even though we got on Spike, that was not a cure-all because guys had to get paid and we just didn't have much money floating around.
So the Observer is also going to report that Jeremy Borash is back in his role because of Kevin Nash. Now, Kevin Nash is apparently telling everyone, hey, I helped JB get his spot back. Tell us what you remember about what's going on with Jeremy and how tight he and Kevin were in real life.
So, when it says Jeremy get his spot back, this means I think you're assuming this, Conrad, but just for folks that do not, Jeremy Borash was with me from day one, the originator with myself of the Summer of No Worries. So Jeremy, editor, jack of all trades. I mean, he literally did a little bit of everything, but at this time he was, in my opinion, very integral part of our on-screen broadcast. So he was the backstage interviewer. I think he's got look, he grew up in Minneapolis, huge fan of Mean Gene. He had some Mean Gene in him, but he made it his own. But there was kind of an initiative from Spike and I think Dixie weighed in and look, I'll say, I'm not putting it all on Spike or Dixie, just there was a presence. How do we get more females on the show? Because our women's talent was just in the developmental stages as well. They were coming along. Gail was coming along and Jacqueline during this time and others. But anyway, and so there was sort of a mandate, get a female backstage reporter. Well, it's one thing to be a pretty face and say you can do this. It's a whole nother thing to have a personality and being able to conduct interviews and get in and out of segments on time and get what done need to be said. Anyway, so we went through a series, and I think her name was Letitia Klein, and maybe we tried others. But that's candidly where Christy Hemme became a ring announcer. Spike wanted females on the show. And so we didn't have a deep roster of women. So backstage interviewer, ring announcer. And so JB for a time, I don't know if he was ever pulled completely off TV, but he was pulled down. And I can assure you, Kevin Nash, maybe over some late night red wine, voiced his opinion. And a lot of other folks voiced their opinion that, look, JB's just too good. He's very much the glue getting in and out of segments and backstage interviews. So JB was back in the saddle during this era.
So on January 15th, you taped TV to begin this build towards Against All Odds. On the 18th, you have Sting kidnapping Jim Mitchell, LAX retaining their tag straps over Team 3D, Jacqueline and Gail Kim brawling in a bathroom. Kip James is going to approach Christy Hemme and tell her to go down to climb the ladder in TNA. And Christian is going to tell Kurt Angle he hired an anger management coach to help him train for the match. And that's the whole first half, Jeff. This Christy Hemme stuff, boy, this does not age well. And the Torch reports there's some real life heat between LAX and Team 3D after their match at Final Resolution, because apparently it's felt that maybe Homicide took advantage or was taken advantage of by Brother Ray. Of course, Brother Ray, as we know him, is Bully Ray. Do you remember there being an issue with Bully Ray and Homicide here?
I don't remember the specifics, but come on. Bubba, accomplished. He's uber aggressive is a diplomatic way to say it, but I don't think this is a far stretch to when you're in a match with Bubba, you're going to know you're in a match with him. He's going to take all you give him and then some. And so you better take back. And so maybe there was a little rocky spot in the road, but I don't ever remember it being anything, completely out of the ordinary. But yeah, I can see that. I will say this, that Gail Kim brawl in the bathroom, folks, if you want to go back and watch that on the Impact app, it was good. So that first half hour had a lot of talking, to say the least, and not some of it not so tasteful. But that brawl was very, very good. I remember, I do remember that. That was some good content, but the Hemme stuff, you're correct. That aged so well, pal.
James Storm is going to beat Lance Hoyt, but he needs Jacqueline, AJ Przinsky, and Dale Torberg to get involved too. And there's a note in the Observer, which is why I bring this up. It was written here that Simon Diamond, the real life Pat Kenny, who I think is helping out the NWA these days, is assigned to help make Hoyt's punches better. Do you remember this being an issue? How did this come up? And is this rumor an innuendo or just chat me?
I have zero recollection of that, but I am here to say that doesn't mean it's not true. It could have been something that Terry Taylor told Pat, hey man, work on his punches. I don't know, but it's funny. We're talking about Lance, and here 15 years later, he main evented Dynamite the other week. So this whole storyline, I do remember because AJ Przinsky was a current player at the time. Now look at him on Fox broadcast. He's one of the best studio hosts there is in baseball. But I thought this was a storyline, a fun storyline. Got a lot of PR that sort of went unnoticed from inside the industry and certainly inside TNA. But there's a lot of press done. Hats off to Ross Foreman for getting that done.
Chat me up. Who had the best punch in wrestling?
I'm super biased.
Well, I know the answer. I mean, you don't have to tell me the answer. Actually, let's say our answer at the same time. On three, look right at your camera and say the answer. Here we go.
You, pal.
1, 2, 3. Jerry Lawler.
Lawler.
Yeah. Of course it's Lawler. Why is Lawler's punch better than everybody else's? What's the magic in a great wrestling punch?
I mean, Jerry has told me, and I think he's told others, and I know my dad used to tell me this, you have to move in the ring, not for the person on the front row, but for the person on the back row. Look as far, whatever the seat, when you stand in the ring, whatever the seat is hardest to see, the top of the building, obstructive view, work to that person. If they can see what you're doing and understand what you're doing, the arena can. So I think it's that. I think the wind up. I also think there's a lot of magician in there. You know, if you punch, you just left hand, all that. But realism also. Lawler, known to break Jimmy Hart's jaw once. So
yeah, I mean, for a guy who's known for the best working punch ever, there is a story or two out there where,
yes,
well, that one landed.
Yes, sir. So I do say there is. Look, you can't break a guy's jaw overnight, but you sort of have to visualize how would it look if I tried to punch this guy right in the jaw. A lot of guys will hit on the top of the head and over the head and on the ear and in the throat. And there's just something about the optics that not from a conscious level, but from a subconscious level, you go, that didn't resonate emotionally. That didn't work. Lawler would punch you right in the jaw, literally right in the jaw. Good stuff, man.
So we got Kurt Angle and AJ in the main event. And this seems like this could have been a match that was built up to draw a big TV rating, but here it is really given away with no push. I mean, are we living and dying too far by the ratings at this point? Or, and here's what I mean. Like, I know that sometimes we wrestling fans like to just think, wow, we know wrestling, but what we're talking about is maybe 1997 wrestling, where the television rights fees are not huge. And the majority of your money is made on pay-per-view and then arena sales. And then there's some television rights. But in this era of TNA, pay-per-view buys are not a priority because, well, candidly, they're not doing all that great. Now that becomes chicken and the egg. And you could say, well, maybe if you did a better job with your TV, you would sell more pay-per-views, and I'll entertain that. However, right now in the here and now, which is where we're operating, if we're doing things like trimming shuttle service, because we need to, it is an economic situation. The priority is going to be, let's take care of our biggest revenue stream. Let's take care of our TV. But it does feel like even the TV could be bigger if we built to this match instead of, oh, and here's AJ and Kurt, y'all go tear it up. Cause we know they're gonna, right? So talk me through that.
Well, and in the notes, shout out to Derek, 4 minutes. It is such a reflection of, okay, we built this episode for a 4 minute AJ Kurt match. That's a fail.
And if it goes on last, by the way, and I didn't mean to cut you off. It's a 2 hour, if it's an hour show or it's a 2 hour show, whatever. If the main event starts with 10 minutes left, well, we know what we got. We got let down. That's what we got.
So again, growing pains of a 1 hour show. And I don't want to say just trying to keep a roster happy, because above that, we're trying to keep Spike happy. And we've got the pay-per-view that you just alluded to, but you know, end of the day, you can just see and reflect that again, my head was in the game most of the time, dealing with a lot of stuff. Dutch, you can just almost look at the stories in Dutch and Abyss and the prison yard. He's over that, but you know, just, it was a lot of hodgepodge here because, you know, I love to say, all my leadership, we wrote some great shows. When I read this back and went, okay, no matter how you slice and dice it, we did a 1 hour show, but gave Kurt and AJ 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Can't win them all, pal.
Angle gets the win with the Olympic slam on a chair in 4 minutes. Tomko comes out. Rhino tries to run him off. Then Samoa Joe comes out. And the show ends with Sting trying to discover and expose Abyss's past. This story in particular feels like it's got Dutch's fingerprints all over it. I know he was high on Abyss. Is that true as far as you know?
Well, I remember that as we came on Spike, Abyss is the monster, if you watch the Asylum days, that lived under the stairs. But okay, character development. Yes, he's a mask guy, but let's give some, why is he, we wanted to do in depth. Let's create this character and evolve this character and have a backstory. And I thought Sting just did a phenomenal job many, many times. You know, the Joker TNA, the TNA Joker Sting and all this. But in this, Sting put his heart and soul into, let's develop the backstory on why Abyss is this monster man. So there's definitely I can just read it and know that there's some fingerprints of Vince Russo on this. Obviously there's Dutch, but there's also lots of fingerprints of Chris Park in this and Jim Mitchell. They had a really big, healthy give and take collaborative effort, often during 06, 07, 08, 09.
You know, if you were a boo bird, once upon a time, you may have been, I don't know, critical of the Abyss character and drawn correlations to Kane and said, oh, this is this version of Kane or that version of Kane or what have you. Do you think the character ever took any inspiration from the Undertaker Kane storyline and backstory, if you will?
I don't, but it's so like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But you sort of had to have been in the room. It's, you know, like, okay, are the Fantastics knockoffs of the Rock and Roll or the Fabulous Ones?
Right.
I mean, you kind of have to say, well, they're similar. They're bookend tag teams. They're this or that. Well, yeah, but okay, Tommy and Bobby were their own team as well. And so that's how, in the room with Abyss, and I'll say this, in the room with Abyss, my bad, in the room with Chris Park, talking about Abyss and the development and Dutch and Mike Tenay, and Russo, it was, how do we craft this story of this individual who's tortured soul? And, you know, if you're around Chris and the Rockin' and all that, and you could just, you know, this was his alter ego for real.
So let's talk about what's next here on the show. But before we do, I want to mention Marcus Corvon.
Oh gosh.
The former Monty Brown, the one who got away. And we've talked about that in the archives for you here on TNA. And well, he debuts for the other guys on the ECW program, which is, well, probably not the place you want to debut. Were you surprised that there were changes to the Monty Brown character? It feels like, man, he was perfect the way he was. Why would you change anything?
He might not have been perfect.
Well, you know what I mean? It was working. No, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
I was shocked. 1, 2, once the sort of dust had settled inside, I was almost giddy that I'm going to say, I can't wait to see what Vince does with him. Because if you drew up, look, whether it's a legit background or not, but if you say, I'm going to take this individual and we're going to make him be a former NFL stud that could knock your block off and could cut a hell of a promo, and his wrestling style fits a former football player, that's Monty Brown. And for them to get so far away from any of that and come out with a 3-name moniker, I just went, wow. I thought it laid an egg from day one. I just never understood that. Never. I'd love to hear, maybe we get Monty on an ad-free special.
Oh
and
my
let
gosh.
us and do what we should. And I'd love to hear the character development of that. What do you think? What are you shaking the head for?
I mean, the idea that we can get a pounce on adfreeshows.com is exciting, because I don't think that even you can wrap your head around that. No. Dude is like beloved, and he has like this underground cult following now of people who are just super fans of what he did and what could have been. And yeah, if we can put an APB out and you can find the old Monty Brown, then man, we got to get him over.
He's around.
Unfortunately, Bam Bam Bigelow is not. He passes away here on January 23rd, 2007. This is a guy that you probably knew way back when. I think he made his debut in like the mid 80s in Memphis. And there's a hilarious video out there. If you want to go watch it, just type it in your Google machine, Bam Bam Bigelow, Memphis. And eventually you might even run into that awesome War Machine music video where you guys were putting together some really fantastic music videos that was pretty cutting edge at the time. That was back in either 85 or maybe 86.
86.
And here he is, unfortunately, no longer with us. golly, 2007, gone way, way too soon. Any good Bam Bam memories you can share with us?
Oh, Conrad, when I read this, I'll never forget 1986. The booking sheets, and my dad's telling me, I don't know, hey, Larry Sharp's coming down. He's got this kid named Bam Bam Bigelow. It's unbelievable. Oh, yeah. Like, okay. So Bam Bam comes right in, and Memphis TV and Around the Loop, and he's working with Lawler right out of the gate. And I can remember going, now this guy's been in wrestling school. Like, what? He came, I don't think wrestling school was, it was months, if not weeks. And Larry brought him down, and Larry traveled with him. But the matches that Lawler was, Bam Bam could throw a hell of a punch. Now, Lawler selling him, he makes anybody look good. But I could not believe the athleticism, how in our loop, a guy who, look, if you beat up Lawler, you're going to get over pretty quick. But just how he was instantly the top heel, like overnight. This guy with tattoos and flames on his head. And look, I'm straight off the basketball courts, and I'm just amazed at this guy that I'd never heard of. And he's a walking, talking main event megastar in our territory, but only been around less than a year. And Conrad, he worked the loop, and look, maybe on other podcasts, we'll get into different stories and all that kind of stuff, but I'm giving you the quick non-granular version that all of a sudden he's like, yeah, Larry's got me over in Japan. We're going to go do this Japan deal. And I'm like, and who, yeah, Hogan, what? And then I'm doing this and that. Okay. And he's telling me all this. And then the next thing you know, oh yeah, he's going to be at Royal Rumble. He's going to be at Mania. He, like, in 2 years, he went from Evansville, Indiana to top heel in the WWF, making big money. And I was just, as a kid, I was a huge mark for that. I was like, wow, that didn't take long. He's already up there making big money, and I'm making $40 at Evansville and Louisville. So how about that? But old Bammer, and then I worked with him in WCW and worked with him at the WWF in the mid 90s. But my early Bam Bam stories were, dude, what an athlete. What a box office. So good.
So there's talk in the torch that Shane Douglas, who's working for TNA in this era, was dozing off during a production meeting after Bigelow's death. And it's written here that he just wasn't handling it well. Do you remember this? I mean, obviously, we've talked about what an impact Owen's death had on you, as your real life friend passed away way too early. And obviously that's a totally different story, but still, when you hear about these guys who were gone way too soon, I'm sure your heart just goes out to Shane, who obviously had been friends with Bammer for a long, long time. But do you remember this time in particular where apparently Mr. Douglas just was, not having a good go here?
We always, all of us, you stick around long enough, we're going to have bad days at the office, but I don't particularly remember. Yes, I remember Shane having some bad days, but I don't particularly remember Bammer's death connected to Shane, connected to this time frame. But, because I didn't realize how close they were, Bam Bam and Shane, that ECW run and the connectivity of all of it. But no, I don't have any direct recall of any of that.
So let's also mention this same era, the company, the WWE, is going to release Tatanka, Rodney Back, Jazz, C.W. Anderson, Sylvester Turkey, the Shane Brothers, Tony Mamaluke, the Bashams, Gangrel, Bill DeMott, and Tom Pritchard. This sucks, but it's part of the business. When you hear that WWE is cutting some folks and making some changes, do you immediately look at that list and think, ooh, who can we grab? Or what's the thought process for TNA in that era?
Out of that whole list, I pretty much, I knew most of them, if not all. Obviously, me and Tom go back to the mid 80s, but if you were to have and we'll get into it on this show, Conrad, for a 1 hour show, we had so many people, we couldn't pay them all anyway.
Yeah.
So we had no room for anyone. And Kurt was on our roster as on our payroll. We didn't have much wiggle room on this 1 hour budget.
Are you surprised with that in mind? You know, just hearing that approach, boy, that sounds logical, but it feels like, you know, we're not trying to speak out of school here, but it feels like every time we turn around, somebody new is debuting for AEW. And I often wonder, and again, I'm not there. What the hell do I know? But I often wonder, man, how are they going to use all these guys? Because it feels like even though there's a whole lot of folks who I'm sure are just thrilled to have the opportunity to work there and probably being compensated very handsomely, it becomes a real challenge to get that many wrestlers featured on really just a handful of minutes, because in the scheme of things, you don't have a ton of time back then with the 1 hour TNA product, or even now based on roster size. Are you sometimes scratching your head too? Like, man, maybe everybody's hunky dory. I mean, hell, I don't know, but it feels to me like eventually there's going to be, golly, we got too many guys. We can't use them all. Right?
Conrad, been around a few years. There is, well, I've got firsthand knowledge, but big deal, but that you cannot make 150 guys happy with 3 hours of broadcast television.
That's what I get. Now, to be clear,
it's impossible. And I'm not knocking, but Conrad, I did an interview earlier today promoting my world. We were chatting it up, but they asked me sort of about different things. And I said, look, in the 80s, Vince took all the territory stars.
Right.
And made money. In the 90s, the golden age of cable television and all of the you know, you look at, you know, Undertaker and Rock and Stone Cold and all that. And so you had two brands. So the rosters, I don't want to say were mega deep, but you had just enough stars on each brand. And, you know, Eric went to 3 hours and hired luchadors. Anyway, so you see where I'm going with that. And then in the 2000s, when we launched, that one company went away, but there wasn't, the territory folks were calling. So the feeder systems were almost non-existent. So we're finding the AJ Styles of the world, you know, different places, but there wasn't a plethora of great talent. There just wasn't in the 2000s. Then you get into the 2010 and the streaming world, but all of a sudden now that generation of folks that grew up on the Attitude Era, and they're all out working the 1PWs and the Ring of Honors and different independents. And so all of a sudden, guys get a little bit better and a little bit better. And I think from 2010 to 2020, you had a lot of guys getting ready and developing and breaking in. And now 2022, we're overloaded with great. I think there's never been as much talent in the history of the business. Now I know going back to the territory days, we're going to slice numbers and blah, 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 blah. And there was a lot of talent back then. But I think in 2022, a boatload of talent, but there is not anywhere close to enough spots. And so that promotion, Conrad, that me and you are not.
We're definitely not doing. At the end of the show today, stay tuned, because there will not be an announcement about our new promotion.
Folks, if you get the video version, Conrad's wink's the best. But anyhow, there's just not enough spots. And so Tony has his challenge over there. I don't care, elevation and dark and all that. It's still YouTube, which is great, building content, building library. But I'm talking about, you have 2 hours on Wednesday night, because Rampage, no matter how you slice and dice it, folks, it's on Friday night, kind of late.
Well, it's an hour. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I just think about, you know, how you've got all these different personalities to manage. And first of all, let me say this. Thank you. My goodness. Thank you to Mr. Khan, for investing so much in wrestling and creating so many jobs and paying the guys so well, and just really changing the game with the way a lot of, the wrestling business at large has been handled, because they have done so much. But I just think about the freaking nightmare that it must be to manage all these different personalities and then come up with something creative week in, week out, for dozens upon dozens upon dozens of talent. And then I see this list and I'm thinking, me being a wrestling fan, again, I take my business guy hat off and I put my wrestling fan hat on, and I'm thinking, man, I bet you were probably thinking, oh yeah, I got an idea for this guy, and this guy could do something with us, and we needed a tag team. But then you hit me with the reality, buddy, we only had an hour. So we had too many guys as it was. That's not something.
You're on Spike with 1 hour. Bad news is you're on Spike with 1 hour. Same with Tony right now.
Right. And that's my point is, I want to be clear. I'm not being critical of AEW, you know, quote unquote, stockpiling talent. I think it's fantastic that they've been able to invest as much in wrestling and create as much in wrestling. And I'm talking about jobs, but I just think creatively, we as fans, we sort of get just conditioned to, hey man, I wonder who's going to be the next debut. Oh, yay. So-and-so's here. This is great. And it gets a big moment, but then you fast forward 9 months and you're like, okay, we're ready for another one.
Conrad,
it's a lot.
Let me throw something at you. In the corporate world, when there's belt tightening, and I use that word, but who are the first to go when you just look at an overall corporate structure? Middle management.
Yes.
Middle management goes. So when you look at AEW, the top talent, you're good. Introductory folks, you're good. You're in that middle slot. A little word to the wise, my friend. Your TV time's not going to get better. That's just a fact of any type of organization.
Well, here's the reality. Your TV time could get better, ... at the expense of someone else. I mean, because that's the issue. You've got all these moving parts.
That's what I'm saying. It's
somebody's got to get it, which means somebody's sitting in the back.
That's right.
And, that's an unfortunate situation. But again, to be clear, everybody's getting paid. So roll tide on that.
Oh no, it's great. It's just, it is the necessary evil that Tony Khan signed up for. Yeah.
Not that he created, but it is it's what it is at that top level.
Sure.
You're playing in the biggest sandbox now. And, I'm just telling you, Jeff, break down and talk about the wrestling business 7 days a week. And even as I scan that list, I'm thinking, man, there was probably somebody on there that Jeff was like, or somebody in creative was like, hey, we need that guy. And then you just hit me with the about face reality of, nope, we had too many guys as it was.
Way too many.
Shit. Now that's not something we fans ever think about. Too many guys. What do you mean too many guys?
And Conrad, let me put the little, and you can probably in your line of work or any entrepreneur's mindset at this point, we took a necessary and it paid off gamble, but I'd say Mr. Angle was paid way above scale, like way above. He didn't fit into this Impact budget, 1 hour budget. He just didn't. I'm saying all that. Kurt and Sting were paid so far up. So yes, in hindsight, it squeezed a lot of middle management. Is what I'm saying. A lot.
Well, here's another squeeze you're going to have to deal with in this era. You're forced to move Impact to Wednesday to try to make room for the UFC airing on Thursday. Listen, again, it's great to have a TV deal, but man, if you're bouncing around, you're killing your audience. They have been conditioned wrestling fans forever at this point, decades. Wrestling's on Monday night. Now, once you get them dialed into, now it's on Thursday night too. And then one Thursday they'd show up and it's not there. Well, it's not like they can rewind time and go watch it on Wednesday. They missed it. So they may think, well, hey, maybe it's like dog shows or tennis. It'll be there next Thursday. Nope. It's gone. It's on Wednesday. You miss a couple of shows and buddy, you're just something they used to watch, right?
Conrad, I remember coming in the office. I'm not saying this specific instance, but I'd come in the office and go back to back to my office. And on the way back there, my assistant would say, hey, Kevin K's office called. And when you got in, I'm supposed to call his assistant. They said it won't take long. Quick call. You just let me know, Jeff, when you're ready. And I'm like, hey, it's Kevin. You call them back. You just tell them whenever Kevin wants to talk, I'll jump on the line. Okay. Hey, Jeff, we got Kevin online. Can you jump on? Yep. Then I'd get on. Hey, how you doing? I'm talking to the assistant. Yep. Let me patch Kevin in. Kevin, come in. Jeff, we just wanted to give you a heads up. So-and-so date, this. Okay. We're going to have to move you to Wednesday nights, UFC. We know it's not the news you want to hear, but I think you understand. Yes, sir. Kev, totally get it. But man, you hang up and you just know, okay, that's a week. So how do we retell the stories the following week? Because we lost our audience week in this week. So not the best call, but it's the nature of the beast.
The January 24th Impact opens with Samoa Joe talking about how he didn't lose to Kurt. He just ran out of time. and he wants to make sure Kurt gets a fair title shot. So he'll be the enforcer when he wins the NWA title, if he wins it from Kurt. Kurt comes out, and then Tomko and Christian follow, talking about their anger management coach. And then Tomko makes this vague reference about changing the announce team. AJ's going to show up dressed up like Raven. He's going to attack Rhino and bust him open. That goes right into Jerry Lynn winning a non-title 4-way X Division match where Lynn is going to pin the champ, Chris Sabin. And there's a scene from the paparazzi crew that's going to follow Eric Young, Slick Johnson, and Jeremy Borash around a convenience store. And it's based around looking for small condoms. And then James Storms walks in and makes fun of them. I bring this up because in the Observer, it says this: I'm not sure why a referee who isn't playing a heel ref at all would be hanging out with a heel at 4 a.m. laughing at a babyface. It's probably an inside rib, because in real life, it wouldn't be unusual for Johnson to be out at a convenience store after taping in Orlando at 4 a.m. picking up stuff for Jarrett. And buddy, that just tickled me for a variety of reasons. First of all, I had no idea that you had 4 a.m. gopher runs and that you had Slick Johnson to make for you. And even if it's not true, I want you to pretend it is, because this is great shit. And then I love that somehow in there, Jarrett is now associated with, small condoms, I suppose.
Oh no, that's with, referee Slick Johnson.
Yes.
And Jeremy Borash, the paparazzi. When I sort of read this back, and I was like, I'd have to go back and watch that scene. I think the scene wasn't actually, I think it was like they're all at the convenience store, not together. It's the camera, and Eric Young is looking for I don't remember exactly, but the paparazzi, that was a lot of fun. Kevin Nash, that's a whole nother podcast, a lot of fun. But the old Slick Johnson, 4 a.m. may be a little late, but I know last call back in the BS days, whenever, I don't know when they quit serving. So Slick was known, and Slick. So
you get the last call at 1:45, and we're not ready for the party to be done. So, hey, Slick, run down, get a couple cases. Come on back.
Come on at Club Jarrett up at the DoubleTree.
What time would Club Jarrett usually wind down? When did you put your head on a pillow?
Conrad, you are really going inside baseball here, pal. It depended on if it's a Monday, Tuesday run or a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday run, you had to get up and go to taping like that. If it's a Tuesday, oh boy, we've seen the sunrise many a time.
Sting announces that Abyss shot his father in the back of the head 3 times.
Yeah, Conrad, what a segue, and you went right into homicide. Look at you.
And then Abyss attacks Sting and gives him a brutal beating, including a fireball. So Abyss shot his dad in the head 3 times, and he throws fireballs.
Draslin.
No correlation to Kane either. I don't know why anybody ever thought that.
Jerry Lawler threw fireballs before Kane was thought of. So
not talking about that, just saying there's an issue with their parents.
I got you.
And people died, and they wear masks now. And there's another spooky
what was the Kane story? Let's
move on. Christian defeats Christopher Daniels when Tomko and Joe get into it at ringside, and Christian's going to take advantage. Angle comes out, and he's going to get into it with Joe. And then Kip James is going to ruffle some feathers and upset TNA management, according to an interview. Quote, Kip said if WWE called and offered enough money, he'd leave TNA in a heartbeat. He claimed he left WWE on good terms, and WWE let him go because they wanted to refresh the locker room. Apparently Terry Taylor confronted Kip about his comments, and Kip told people backstage that Taylor told him not to say negative things about the company in interviews. Kip asked, what are they going to do about it? Because if they fired him, he would jump to WWE in 5 minutes instead of 10, or something along those lines. Kip also said, easy for me to say, when you've seen one X Division match, you've seen them all. And he added that the quote unquote ugly ass of girls on TNA are a big waste of TNA's already limited TV time, and women have no place in a wrestling ring. Now, some of this sounds like it's done, quote unquote, in character, if you will. But obviously he understands guys watching at home, they're not mad that when the women are on TV and there's some maybe gratuitous shots, because clearly they happen so often because they were ratings bonanzas. They're not there just because somebody in the back wants to funny ha. They're there because it gets eyeballs on the product. But the idea that someone had to go tell a longtime veteran like Billy Gunn, who has worked in the biggest organization at the peaks of the industry, and be told, hey man, don't say bad stuff about your employer in an interview, feels a little bit like, I don't think that has to happen. I'm not saying it didn't, but I am saying I doubt it happened this way. Do you remember it happening this way? There's no way a guy is like, if you don't want to give me this money, somebody else will. No, he's got a freaking job. He's cashing checks. He's doing what he loves. I don't think for a minute Mr. Sopp said this.
Little anti-establishment. I don't recall all the ins and outs I just not completely in line with it, but Dave's got a good story there. And so maybe that was
Wade.
Okay. Wade's got a good story there. Maybe some lines being blurred. I'll still say there was a vibe of guys not making enough money. So maybe there's a little mixed messaging in there. But
it also feels like it could just be working the boys because,
it could be completely storyline.
Yes.
I'll say this too. In this era, maybe we were a little bit more buttoned down, but this is the evolution of going from print media to digital media. And you had different interviews set up and, hey man, can I catch you for an interview and this and that? And then it'd get online and wait, did he say that and that? Obviously it still happens today, but it's much more, I think, organized and stuff like that, but who knows? Let's get the Gun Club on here and drill down on this. Now, Billy, I'm with you though. I can't really see this being 100% accurate.
So Kurt Angle goes on Bubba the Love Sponge and talks about how he would like Hulk Hogan, Chris Jericho, and his best friend Big Show in TNA. What? Like, clearly this is not something you guys are saying, hey, we want you to say this. At any point, is there some sort of consideration that, hey, if these are the things guys are saying in the same calendar week, maybe we need some fucking media training around here.
We did go, that's what I'm saying. Is we did sort of go through a period of, all right, guys, we've got to at least stay on track. Also, you can look at, okay, Billy's playing a little bit of his character because we did the on-screen stuff with Hemi and all that.
Right.
And he's trying to stay character development a little bit. So maybe there's mixed messages. And then as far as Bubba goes, I would guess to say that Bubba would say, hey, Kurt, wouldn't you love to have the Hulkster here? And Kurt answers, oh man, aren't you real good friends? Maybe even best friends with Big Show? Oh, of course. Bubba, you'd love to have him. I can see Bubba creating that narrative because, back in the day, I mean, Bubba's numbers were astronomically strong and Hulk had that as a platform and used it to his advantage many, many times. So long story short, Bubba got some publicity. Kurt was on there. They're off to the races.
So interesting. Let's talk about Wrestle Society X. It debuts on MTV on January 26th. Did you take a look at the show? What'd you think? Did you consider it competition?
I can remember some buzz about it, but again, no, I did not watch it when it debuted. I don't even know if there was the old TiVo. I have a great recollection of watching that. Again, a lot on my plate during this time frame. Lots.
Let's keep it going here. In the Observer, it said you had 2 more high-level discussions with Spike focusing on a 2-hour time slot. Are you leading the charge on this? Is Dixie, who's sort of waving the flag for, hey man, we need 2 hours?
All of the Spike conversations, every time I really start thinking about it, that they didn't really realize until after I was removed how much communication I had with Spike daily, certainly weekly. that, when we're doing, so our taping schedule would be, we were doing the 1 hour shows and, on Monday and Tuesday anyway. So the Monday show would be aired on Thursday and the Tuesday show would be aired the following Thursday. So when you deliver, let's say 46 minutes or 45 minutes, to Spike, and then we got to cut that down. The back and forth of edits between Kevin Sullivan and myself and Spike and time codes and all this kind of stuff. Take this shot out, different here, different there. Man, that was kind of a running routine. But Spike saw day in and day out that, we got to cut. And I'll just say on that AJ Kurt match, that went 4 minutes. Not only were we probably going, oh my God, that's we can't do that. Spike was too, because Spike was all about action. And sometimes we thought way too far because sometimes they just wanted action because that's what UFC gave them. And they were correlating the same, like, no, wrestling, you got to give stories. So there was a definite education process and a collaborative process and lots of conversation. I say all that to say in a 15-minute call, 4 times a week, 1 or 2 comments. Well, if we had 2 hours, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Well, if we had 2, so it was an ongoing, I gave them the Chinese water torture treatment as many times as I could say, 2 hours fixes this, 2 hours fixes this. Cause I knew what they were airing on Thursday nights around us. I don't say they had time, but they did. They could make time, but we had to prove ourselves.
Let's talk about Samoa Joe. It's announced here that Samoa Joe was going to be finishing up his run in Ring of Honor. And it's speculated in the Torch that Joe still has heat from a comment he made at a Ring of Honor show about quote unquote tripping over bad booking. Of course, he's talking about TNA booking. And in the Torch, Wade sort of speculates that probably is what led to TNA's decision. Do you remember Joe having heat for that comment?
I don't. But at this time, Terry Taylor was talent relations. He probably, if didn't hear it, got word of it. And it was difficult. We were growing our brand. They were trying to grow their brand. Look, in the Ring of Honor, I always said that, man, what a heel Russo would have made at Ring of Honor. I mean, can you imagine him coming? I mean, just the whole, it was Joe is, I love Joe, megastar. Boy, he helped us a lot. We grew together, but Joe knows how to get over and stay over. So him doing a little inside baseball jab got him over to that Ring of Honor crowd. And did it really hurt us? No, but I'm sure it ruffled some feathers, specifically Dixie. And all right, let's figure out how to not do this. And in a lot of ways, it probably wouldn't be good for Spike to hear those kind of comments because the network writes the check.
Well, here's what they're writing a check for. On February 1st, Impact opens with Chris Sabin mocking Jerry Lynn with a walker while VKM and Bob Backlund were waiting outside Jim Cornette's office. That's a real sentence. Austin Starr wins the next Division 5-way, pinning Lynn with Sabin's interference. The anger management consultant is teased with Christian and Tomko without revealing who it is, but he is saying, we don't want Tomko doesn't want to cater to quote unquote him. And Borash is going to speculate on who the anger management consultant is. And he brings up names like Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, Samoa Joe, and none of the above. Listen, man. Whew. So much wrong with that sentence. Why in the world would you even tease something that if it is a surprise and we're trying to position it for a surprise and we want people to get excited about it, why would we plant a bug in their ear or a thought in their head rather that maybe it's Goldberg, maybe it's Lesnar? It's definitely not. And all we're doing is setting up a disappointment. Are we not? Why even bring them up?
I read this in the research and I'd love to go back and see delivery. My gut tells me that Jeremy would deliver the Goldberg and Brock Lesnar names so laughable that you're going, all right, now, yeah, we know it ain't them. Like Jeremy's just teeing it up to sort of gig because who we were going to deliver was the I mean, so far out of left field that this guy is anger management because he's the Antichrist anger management, So my guess, Conrad, if we could watch it back or listen to it back, that delivery of how he would table those names, my gut tells me that Jeremy would basically give the wink, wink to the camera that, folks, it's not this, but who the hell is it? Oh, I do know who it is. And folks, Jeremy had a Mean Gene way about him that you.
Oh, he definitely did. Yeah.
I want to see who this is. I want to see this. Not hard selling Goldberg and Lesnar at all.
Kip James and Christy Hemme get into it again, and Jim Cornette interrupts to book a match for her at the pay-per-view. And Cornette has the line of the show. He says, "You want to get even with him?" Talking about Kip. "Marry him. That'll teach him." Jim Mitchell tells Sting
Jim Cornette
he opened Pandora's box now with Abyss, and he challenged him to a prison yard match. Is this Russo or is this Dutch? A prison yard match.
I mean, the easy would be Dutch. But I mean, it could have been me. It could have been somebody in the room that said, "Hey, why don't we call it this?" Spike and the creative team, you wanted those billboards when you give the pay-per-view rundown that not just Abyss versus Sting, name it a match. In reality, it's another way to do a dressed up version of a hardcore, but fit the storyline. So collaboratively, let's hang it on the world's worst fantasy football player, Chris Park.
Jonny Damon shown in the crowd as Lance Hoyt cuts a promo about his match at Against All Odds featuring David Eckstein and AJ Przinsky. Samoa Joe and AJ Styles go to a no contest in the main event when Rhino, Christian, and Angle interrupt, and the show ends with Christian swinging a chair at Joe and missing and then hitting Angle. Joe puts a choke on Christian to show he's not the anger management coach, and then AJ attacks and saves Christian. And it's announced here that Chris Jericho's band Fozzy is going to provide a music video for TNA show on Monday when WWE isn't running. That's a cool little feather in the cap, getting something from Jericho on there. Who would have made that call?
You know what? I was racking my brain. My gut tells me again, Barry Bloom, his agent, would have made, because we've had relationships, whether it was Nash or Barry's, again, one of the smartest men ever in this industry. You just look at his Rolodex of clients dating back to Jesse the Body Ventura. My gut tells me Barry would have made the initial, and then, in production, we were always looking for different theme songs, pay-per-view themes that we could just have enough of an arm's length attachment to the wrestling industry and Fozzy. And, God almighty, just think about that. 15 years ago, Jericho's rocking Fozzy. And it's still rocking all these years later. So pretty cool.
Let's talk about BG James, your old pal Brian. He goes on the radio and echoes Kip James' comments that he too would go back to WWE at the first chance. He even mentions that he's behind on his house and has a piece of shit car. So if there's money involved, he'd have to go, even though you're his friend, and it'd be tough to leave you. This is why I think, man, this is just storyline. There's no way Brian Armstrong, the road dog, gets on an interview and says, "Man, I'm behind on my house and I got a piece of shit car." This is an angle. Right? Well,
you don't know Road Dogg, do you?
I just can't believe he would say that on the radio. Like, listen, I get in a joke, in a text message, or at the bar, whatever. But damn, come on, man.
Blurring the lines. I wish I did recall. We need to get Brian on here. Look, I'm doing a lot of shout outs and call outs.
I want to know what the piece of shit car was, is what I want to know. Lance Storm goes on his website. He writes about the current state of the booking. Quote, "I know I do this a lot, but I'm about to go on another TNA rant. I didn't want to, but I got so worked up and angry after watching this week's show, I had to get this off my chest. I can, however, promise that this will be my last TNA rant for a while, because I am now officially boycotting TNA until Vince Russo is removed from the creative process. How a company with such an amazingly talented locker room can produce such an unwatchable show is beyond me. Actually, it isn't beyond me. I watched Vince Russo do it in WCW. And there's an old expression, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Someone needs to explain the history of WCW to Dixie Carter. I've come to the conclusion that TNA is to wrestling what Scary Movie is to horror films. It has become a comedic spoof of a wrestling show. No sane, rational person would act the way people do in TNA. Chris Sabin, in an effort to make fun of Jerry Lynn's age, actually shows up in a bathrobe using a walker and wearing Depends. Is he 6? Who would do this? It felt like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Why would Jerry be mad that Sabin is making himself look like an idiot? There were only 3 matches on the show. All of them had outside interference and brawling after the match. We got a total of maybe 10 minutes of match time on the entire show, and they didn't even bother to announce the result of the main event. Do finishes not matter? Doesn't anyone care who won? I used to plug a pay-per-view caliber main event and then deliver a 3-minute match with no finish is asinine. I am officially at wit's end and will not watch another TNA show until they replace Vince Russo. So listen, this is not, whatever you call Wade and Dave, fiction writers or whatever. This is a well-respected person in the business. This is one of the boys. This is a rational, no monkeys on his back, no demons in his closet. This is Lance Storm just giving you the business here with some real logic, slapping you upside the head with some rational thinking. What'd you think when you read that?
So let me ask you this, and I'll give you my answer. Do you think Lance actually would boycott a show, or do you think he's writing that?
He's writing it. He watched the next week.
Okay.
And everybody knows that.
Okay. It just sort of fascinates me that, hey, I am writing this, folks. I'm never going to watch it again. Bottom line is, oh man, I got to go watch. Lance Storm's fans had to go. If Lance is this upset, hell, I got to go watch this train wreck. It's just the nature of the beast. It's not like one person would say, okay, Lance, if you're not watching, I'm not watching. That it just isn't how human nature works. It always that. So it never, for me to say, I take it with a grain of salt. It was interesting. People, Lance was one of those guys early. I mean, going back, look, here we are 15 years ago that sort of migrated over into the media side or the commentary side, or if you will. And look, it goes without saying, Lance's on-screen character and his personality, he is not a Russo-esque type wrestling fan by any stretch of the imagination. And self-admittedly, I was well aware that we were doing too much out of the ring content. I was well aware of that. I was also trying to get ratings. And if you look at my minutes, when the match starts and it goes ding, ding, the next minute is lower. It just is. So ratings go down with in-ring action, and you can build back as you go towards your finish. But so I understood it. I thought Lance, hats off to him, because he was early in the game of being a in-ring performer as well as wearing the journalist hat. But look, I knew our product sucked at times as well. We were serving too many masters. That's simple.
So let's talk about Christy Hemme. It's written in the Torch that the angle she's doing with VKM is going to lead to the Heartthrobs debuting against them. Do you remember that being the plan?
Who's the Heartthrobs?
They were with WWE for a hiccup. One of the fellows, friend of the show, does a show with WrestlingObserver.com.
What's his name?
Gosh, Antonio Thomas.
Yep. Okay. I don't recall it.
All right.
Glad there's a lot in this episode. As I went through it, I was like, man, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. Oh, I do. Anyway, I think a lot of blurring of the lines for myself.
From the Torch, it says Mike Tenay has been pushing to get a spot back on the booking team and was said to be the person who took the removal from the booking team the hardest after Russo was brought in. And it's then reported in the Observer that Tenay is going to be working closer with creative, but he won't be on the creative team. What do you remember about Mike and his, heart for creative?
Vince always, bro, you got too many people in the room. I always translated it as, yeah, you don't want anybody giving you point counterpoint. It's that simple, Vince. I got it. Vince, and I'm the opposite of that. I really am. I think let's get a lot of ideas. Look, there are times that we need to do breakout meetings and streamline it and say, okay, the 4 weeks goes to 6 weeks, goes 8 weeks, or a 3-week arc or a 3-month arc or whatever it may be. But in the juggling of, okay, Russo's gone to Dixie and he wants the room cut out, and that's the only way I can write TV, and that whole freaking juggling act that would get so frustrating at times. I always said, Mike will sit in the room and listen 80, 90% of the time, 70% of the time. But if he's in the room and he understands the genesis of the story, first beat, second beat, third beat, fourth beat, you're only making your show better because Mike is so good and such a professional. He's going to narrate the story that needs to be said. He's not in the room. And Vince always looked at Mike as, oh, Mike's traditionalist or this or that. No, it didn't. Mike wants to be good at his job. And if you have him in the room as a part of this process, it just makes the process better. But so Mike fighting to get back on the booking committee, no. Wanting to be heard and understand the stories that Vince was writing, whether it's the prison yard match or the Christy Hemme, Kip Jan, whatever it may be. Mike, I can't say enough good things to get out the back because he is professionalism from the word go and always has been and always will be.
It's reported in the Observer that Cornette was asked to be a part of the booking committee, but hadn't yet made a decision on it. Jeff, did you really think there was a circumstance where you could get Cornette and Russo to be in the same room talking creative here in 07?
No, not in the same room, but
yeah.
Collaborating. Yes. Because I respected both of their abilities. I always did. That Vince looked at the industry one way and Jim another way and Dutch another way and like Mike Tenay another way. I always thought I have to have an open mind and see things differently. I didn't call them blind spots back then, but I was well aware of observing Dutch or Bill Dundee or Jerry Lawler or my dad that, they don't always see things the way you get out here and work 7 days a week. There's a different mindset of being around this 7 days a week, as opposed to just Saturday morning Memphis TV, no matter how seasoned you are. So I was always welcome. I'll call it committee, not a committee booking, but a committee. Buck has to stop with one individual.
A couple notes here from the Torch I want to mention. Because of TNA's new policy of not paying for hotel rooms, some of the younger wrestlers are staying 6 to a room to save money and have shifted out of the expensive DoubleTree that's near the impact zone. Sting, Nash, and Kurt Angle regularly dress in Jeff Jarrett's locker room. Nash, though, hangs out with the younger wrestlers more than the older ones behind the scenes. I guess what I'm trying to bring up here is, Jeff, is there a disconnect between the top and mid-card guys? It feels like this could be a big way to affect morale, and not in the best way.
There was during this time, then in the now. No, we were a 1 hour show. They were talking about my dressing room at Universal Studios. Just because of the layout of the whole office, my green room was really big. And I said it over and over and over. I'm going to be in this room when I get dressed to perform. And during this time, I wasn't even performing. So let Kurt in there, let Nash in there, let guys that have some, that have been around, let them dress in there. But we had plenty of facilities around and guys dressed where they wanted to dress and guys living 6 to or staying 6 to a room. That was their call. And a lot of guys also realized that, okay, maybe not 6 to a room, but maybe 3 to a room. I've spent 3 to a room many times with Scott Hall and Lex Luger or Kevin Nash. And I didn't mind that rollaway cot at all back in the day. So it was being smart about your money and saving money. And, but good for Wade and good for Dave, making good newsletter content because there was some accuracy to it as well.
The Torch also says TNA sent a memo to wrestlers this week telling them they can no longer do interviews with any media entity without prior approval from management and that they are not to say disparaging things about the company. Any violation of that policy will result in a wrestler losing the equivalent of their next pay-per-view payoff. And listen, this to me, I know a lot of people will hear this and they'll say, oh, well, this or that. But the reality is Vince McMahon's had that policy in place for a long time. So this is not a new thing.
Lord,
it's not like we can go villainize TNA for making this call. Vince had done it forever.
The wonderful world of technology. And when you think about, this is a time that online interviews actually didn't exist.
Yeah.
The year before. I mean, nowadays talent can't even really fathom it because you can tweet, future endeavors. Oh, thanks for your time. Oh, I got released. I mean, it's an ongoing newsletter. Just log on to Twitter at any time during this time. And there was this kind of vibe that there was disgruntlement and the P&L was, so there was lots and lots of voices. And like, to Dixie Carter's credit, that was what I think that she was excellent at. Her Trifecta Entertainment is a PR agency, and I picked them because I thought this lady is phenomenal in her messaging, and she was really, really good at that. And so all these talent doing rogue interviews and saying whatever, hell, it drove everybody crazy, but especially the publicity agent. And with Spike on board, we didn't need 15 voices going out there, but it was happening. That was reality. I can sit it here today, 15 years later, and say, man, those were some growing pains because the online interviews were new and the clickbait interviews, BG James said this about the WWE. Oh, click. Christy Hemme, whatever, is going down. Click. I mean, you could just clickbait. That's what it was.
So Goldberg makes it known publicly that he and Brock are not happy about their names being used on TV. Quote, I told him, Lesnar, it pisses you off to a point because you see people capitalizing on your name and it benefits you in absolutely no way, except for the fact that it keeps my name out there, blah, blah, blah. So he's not happy about it. Bob Backlund, he's tickled to be here. February 8th, you put a mic in his hand and say, go cut a promo. He goes 12 minutes. You don't air a minute of it. What do you remember about this 12-minute ramble fest with Mr. Bob Backlund?
I don't know if this was the actual taping, but I do remember it was like us in the back that when you go, okay, Bob, you got 3 minutes. You got to get it in. And it goes 3.5. Wow. God almighty. Goes 4. Dadgummit, Bob. Folks, tell the cameraman, you're talking to the truck. Keith, tell the camera 3, who's up on the ring, up on the post, give him the wrap it up. Okay, now we're at 5. Damn it, Keith, have you? Yes, Jeff, I've told him. All right, come here. Referee, go out to ringside and stand behind the post and wave at Bob and do the cut, the Arn Anderson, cut your time. He's at 6. He's at 7. All right. Is anybody telling Backlund he's over? There's no way we can chop this up and make sense. Getting to the 9th minute. Keith, is there any way the cameraman can just jump down off the apron? Just give up. Quick. just guys, we're 10 minutes in. This is slotted for 3. You can't cut 7. What are we doing? Keith Mitchell, cool hand Luke. Jeff, we've done just about everything. What would you like for us to do? Hell, Keith, you figure it out. By this time, 11 or 12 minutes, I'm not saying this is the interview, but this happened with Bob a couple of times. And Bob comes out. Hey, guys, what'd you think? Bob, it was great, but not 1 minute of it will make TV.
The go-home Impact starts with Abyss defeating Chase Stevens, and then Sting comes out and accepts the prison yard match. Conan, coming off of his knee surgery, needs LAX out to answer to a Team 3D's challenge for the Little Italy street fight. They accept and attack. AJ and Rhino are scheduled to wrestle in a chain match, and AJ promotes it by discussing that he's already a Triple Crown champion in TNA, and at the age of 26, and all Angle was at 26 was an Olympic gold medalist. Sting then lowers a cage that has Jim Mitchell in it, and Abyss comes out for the save. Sting gets a belt. wrapped around his neck, and Abyss takes over and frees Mitchell. Hard to figure out who the heel is here. Jonny Damon hits Dale Torberg with a chair during the Torberg-Przinski promo. Hoyt comes in and tells AJ he can't wait to step into his world and slap him. And the go-home main event is Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe teaming up to take on AJ Styles and Christian Cage. Angle pins Styles with an Olympic slam off the top rope. And after the match, Scott Steiner returns to TNA. He is the anger management consultant, and it's a brawl between Steiner and Angle and the rest. And Steiner gets a pretty damn big pop here. Was this the original idea to get Steiner back? And I want to mention too, the Observer said that Ken Shamrock was also considered. Was that true? And how did you land on Steiner?
I don't recall Kenny. I'm not saying that his name was not bannered around, but it may be one of them things. Hey, Kenny would be good at this, because Christian, the thinking man, thinking out all this. And during this time, you could just see Christian was working with Tomko. He was helping with AJ. Christian is a team player, and he, we can call him a utility man, but I say that is not only can Christian play a couple of different roles, he knows how to utilize different pieces of the puzzle to make a good story. A lot of respect for OJ Riso. But I do remember, okay, how do we reintro Big Papa, anger management, and just, there's only one Scott Steiner. And so this was episodic storytelling. Can't say at its finest, but it's episodic storytelling.
Yeah, we will not say at its finest.
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and talk about the ratings, Jeff. On January 18th, you did a 1.1, which means you had 1.4 million viewers. The 24th is down to a 0.8 because you had to move to a Wednesday because of the UFC. February 1st is 1.0, which means 1.2 million viewers. And February 8th gets a 1.12 with 1.6 million viewers. And that at that point was the most watched Impact show ever. So even though we're sort of poking fun at the creative and saying, the shit set a record, 1.6 million folks, AKA, well, you know the rest. But this is a hell of a little feather in the cap on your go home for the pay-per-view, right?
Well, and see, it's the entire mindset, because look, it's no doubt I've got the traditionalist roots and understanding that, oh my God, we gave Kurt and AJ 4 minutes. And oh my God, we went off the air that episode with Sting talking about a triple homicide or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it was the never ending juggling act of, we've got to develop characters and stories, and that slow build, and Kevin K and the entire Spike team wouldn't get caught up in a week to week. They looked at trends. And as we just continue to build, you could just hear it in their voices. They're not just happy. They're very happy. They wouldn't get wrapped around the axle and say, all right, you only gave 4 minutes. Not great, but fix it next week. We want more action, action, action. And then on our side, we'd go, man, we only gave him 4 minutes. We gave him a lot of story. Hey man, but it's working. Our numbers are growing. We set a record and blah, blah, blah. So, man, Conrad, this industry's, it's funny, man. It's just really, it's always just bizarre. You look at 1.6 million viewers, and now Raw and Dynamite. I know we covered this a couple of weeks ago, but still good numbers on a top 25 cable network. Not a top 10, certainly not a top 5. They were in the top 25. So their cumulative average, primetime average was, I think, a 0.8, 0.7, something along those lines. So we were doing well, Connie.
Until we get to the pay-per-view. The Wrestling Observer readers gave it 55% thumbs down. Only 19% of these poor souls gave it a thumbs up. Meltzer says, when it comes to promotions going downhill and eventually out due to creative reasons, as opposed to being unable to compete, with WCW as the prime example, there are stages. The first stage is fans being mad about the product. The thing about this stage is that they still care. The scary stage is when they accept what has happened and no longer care. The last stage is the point of no return, where you've damaged your brand to the point, even if you give people a good product, they aren't going to give you a chance. And TNA is in a funny situation now. They certainly are not at the final stage, but they are past the first stage and on the road, if not at the second stage. What do you think of Dave's assessment there? That there are stages for a promotion that's in trouble, if you will.
You know, you can hear it not just in that clip, but others, that the TNA LOL narrative was, no matter what the facts were, that ratings were going up, that we were on spike, we were growing, whatever it may be, it was, and I don't want to put it all on Russo, but it was that kind of backlash that we were not catering to the hardcore audience. And so that is, you know, when you hear that, you just go, man, that's, no matter what, we weren't giving him 5-star matches. No, he wasn't giving us any 5-star matches, but, you know, we weren't giving the internet darling, you know, we would put in stuff that, like a prison yard match and all that. So, but as far as you can say that about any relationship that goes south is, you're mad at first, then you're sad, and then you're glad it's over. So, mad, sad, glad. And you know, the TNA faithful that really cared about the product, obviously they kept growing and building, but there were folks that just didn't like any of the Abyss or Hemi or the storytelling stuff that was not in ring focused. Yeah, like the Jerry Lynn deal, him, Chris Sabin, him coming out on Walker, that really offended folks. And I'm thinking, guys, what? And we'll use the Billy Gunn. Oh, they all look the same. Well, they won't all look the same if we give them stories. So give the X Division storylines. Hey, me and AJ Styles had lots of healthy relationships. I said, AJ, you guys do stuff in the ring that nobody will ever attempt to do in the heavyweight decision, but we got to give them stories. And he's like, yep.
So here's the other thing I want to throw on, and then we'll get into the pay-per-view. I can't believe we talked nearly 2 hours. We're not even to the damn show yet, but
no way.
Meltzer also says this: TV ratings are a funny thing because they don't measure how interested people are, only that their television set is on. And ratings only mean something if you're hyping good matches to the people who are watching. Now I realize we just sort of patted you on the back and said, hey man, attaboy, you set a record. Most people viewing the show. Good for you. Good job. But man, we've talked about this a lot. You guys would do phenomenal in the ratings just based on the millions and millions of people watching. But then some of these shows, man, they're getting 8,000 buys. So how do we go from, I don't know, 2 million people watched it and only 8,000 said, yeah, I'll pay money for it.
Now, in this era, to correct you, 8,000 may be a random Wednesday night. We're talking about monthly pay-per-views at this time. I think our low was in the low to mid 20s. But anyway, whoa, it's not jumping up. But yeah, I hear you. Conrad, we've had this discussion on this podcast off. The model was not conducive to pay-per-view growth, but we made it certainly wasn't fatal because it made us a lot of money internationally, but we did not pivot and adjust. And it's like, man, go back in time. How could we have just gone to 4 pay-per-views a year and used the other 2? You know, what was the solution? But the monthly episodic pay-per-view format was over, I think, late 90s.
Well, we're still doing it here. This show in particular gets somewhere between 20 and 25,000 buys. Just to give everyone context though, I didn't make up the 8,000 number.
No.
Against All Odds in 2012 did between 7 and 8,000 buys. Destination X in 2012 did 9,000. Hard Justice in 2012 did 8,000. So there were some, and those are low. That's a time when the roster is just absolutely loaded. And we're splitting hairs. The gist is a lot of folks watching it, not a lot of folks paying. And it does feel like you've, I don't know, there's an apathetic audience. Is that fair to say?
The conversion was not there.
Yeah.
Period. And as was that last week cause that's when, oh no, as with Paulie B on Ad Freeze, we were talking about the Kurt Jeff match, and I slipped over him, and it was when Karen got introduced into the storyline. But the whole stipulation was he was going to have to give Karen away at the wedding on TV. So by 2011, 2012, the white flag was waved on pay-per-view buys. It's clear in the creative. Yeah. Much clearer as we sit here today, but it was get numbers, not pay-per-view buys.
Well, here's what we're starting with on the pay-per-view. It's LAX and Team 3D and a Little Italy street fight. Meltzer says the difference between this and a normal street fight is that the ring was filled with tables like a cafe where there were garbage cans on the ramp and a restaurant next to the strip club. Yeah. Either way though, we got Bully Ray coming out, pulling out some dollar bills, calling out the strippers for a lap dance in the middle of a grudge match. This is real. When it's all said and done, the Observer gave it 2.25 stars. He liked it better than Wade. Wade only gave it 2 stars. Hernandez would pin Devon with a border toss. And Meltzer would say all the early brawling and weapon usage probably contributed to crowd burnout later in the show. This set, I mean, let's just call it like it is. This is fucking stupid.
Bro, we've got to give the match character. I can't do an accent.
Next up, the Austin Star and Senshi. They go 8 minutes and 21 seconds. Backlund's involved because of course he is. Before the match, Star is doing a promo. Backlund comes out. Star calls him a grown-up Opie. It's a good match. Star's teasing using the chicken wing. Of course, that was Backlund's move. Eventually, Star starts throwing chairs into the ring until Backlund comes out. He slaps Backlund. Backlund puts him in the chicken wing and takes him to the back. Of course, the finish, by the way, I guess I missed that. It's a rolling reverse cradle where both guys have their shoulders down. Star celebrating like he won, which of course means Senshi gets his hand raised. Meltzer would be critical here, saying match was good, but the guy it was designed to get over is nearly 58 years old. So 2.75 stars in the Observer, 2.25 stars in the Torch. Wade continues to not like the show as well as Dave. Senshi, if you're not sure, is a big old star, somebody that I thought was going to be a big star for you guys. I just thought he had money dripping all over him. Of course, we're talking about your pal and mine, the great Low Key. And Austin Starr, again, we haven't talked about his name in this regard, but we all know him as Austin Aries. These are two of, you know, a few years prior to this, the biggest and brightest from Ring of Honor. They're on second here, but they're saddled with Bob Backlund. I mean, if you just strip away the Bob Backlund thing and let these guys tear it up, it's probably a better match. And I know that you said, well, we got to give them characters. We got to give them storylines, but it almost is to the detriment of what they can do. Instead of adding to, it feels like it takes away. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes 100% sense. It's the juggling act. Don't always hit it out of the park.
Well, let's see what
and I won't get hung up on this, but I think Senshi's in-ring ability is through the roof.
Oh, I get where you're going.
His character development probably needed some boosting.
Yeah.
Austin Starr in the early days, I love him. I mean, I actually really like the Austin Starr gimmick because he had a sense about him. But Bob, you're a fish out of water. Add a little story to this. Maybe we went too far with it. Certainly don't bat 1,000.
Well, thankfully there's always another segment. And this is where the big fat oily guy wrestles Christy Hemme.
Oh man. Go ahead. I'll let you do the commentary, but go ahead. This is a good one.
The Torch didn't rate it. The Observer gave it -3 stars.
Negative. Can you repeat that one time?
The Torch didn't give it a rating because it didn't justify one. The Observer gave it -3 stars.
Okay. In this match on one corner, your best Jeremy Borash, who's in one corner,
Christy Hemme.
And in the opposing corner,
the big fat oily guy.
Yes, sir, folks. I'd almost like that in that voice you made fun of me about the Comcast guy, but that's another story.
Oh, I do declare. So the crowd is chanting during this match, and I know what you're thinking, because I know when I think of a big fat oily guy wrestling Christy Hemme on pay-per-view, I want to do fight forever. Or, this is awesome or something like that. Turns out
this is awesome.
They're going with fuck you, Russo during the match, which makes air. You can hear it clear as day. And, Meltzer would say that was a real killer. Hemme had her pants taken off, but she stripped the big fat oily guy down to his thong. Fans were booing this and booed her, although in the long run, she's supposed to be the heel in all of this, because the idea is the male audience can't get a girl, certainly not one that looks like her. So before they want to see hot women being degraded, and Kip James represents them. Kip came out and teased he was going to take off his pants, but instead ripped off her shirt and laughed. The idea was to get Kip over as a face and Hemme over as a heel. Russo's original scripting was to have BG run in and put a towel over Hemme, but BG refused, saying if the idea is for VKM to be faces, his putting the towel on Hemme would turn him heel. When he made that point, they switched the script. I mean, Jeff, man.
Conrad, I'll jump right in. It was done on my watch, and the brain can repress things, but under any circumstance, it's just terrible.
Listen, if you,
Conrad, it's just terrible.
I want you to stop what you're doing right now. If you're listening to this, and thank you for listening, hit subscribe, tell your friends. But then I want you to pull up Outlook or Gmail and do that in one window. And in the other window, go to @RealJeffJarrett on Twitter. And that's where you'll see that this silly asshole has decided to let you write him a strongly worded letter. JJ4Jarrett@gmail.com. Folks, if you own a minor league baseball team and you'd like to have podcasts at the plate, send us an email. Or if you have strong feelings about big fat oily guy and Christy Hemme, it's @RealJeffJarrett on Twitter. And he just gives you his email address. And he's saying, beat me up. So enjoy your spam. I know you country folks eat a little weird shit up there every now and again, some vittles. But yeah, some spam coming your way.
Us recording in that late afternoon, not good for the blood sugar. I'm just going to let you in on that, but go ahead, pal.
Next up, Dale Torberg and Lance Hoyt. It gets a quarter star from both Dave and Wade. They go 5 minutes and 4 seconds. I get that we're supposed to be understanding this is good media and it is an opportunity, but the fans ain't here for it. They're chanting baseball sucks. They don't care. It's bad. I can't imagine that anyone thought this should be on a pay-per-view. It should have been on free TV, but
time out. This is a absolute, I can remember not like, that's what's weird is I don't remember the big fat old, any of that, like in the detail, obviously as the Russo production, but I can remember my screw up. I made you guys follow the big fat oily guy, which I thought in theory would have been easy to follow. He was so bad, left a bad taste. It ran into the whole freaking next segment. And here's our World Series MVP, David Eckstein, and future Hall of Famer at the time, Jonny Damon, and, building Lance Hoyt and Dale Torberg, who's deeply integrated into major and minor league baseball, and him being the former Demon of Kiss. And just look, it's going to be a short little match. We're going to get plenty of PR out of it. And what do? We get the Impact Zone chanting baseball sucks. That's what a bad segment will do to your entire show. I'm taking it on the chin today, Conrad. I'm taking it on the chin.
Let's just armchair quarterback this. If we had it to do over again, because what we're talking about is match placement. If we had it to do over again, we would start with Austin Starr and Senshi, and then go to big fat oily guy and Christy Hemme, and then the street fight.
Yes. Well said.
And then we do the baseball stuff.
Yep.
And then it's time for match number 5, AJ Styles and Rhino in a chain match. AJ is going to beat Rhino in a Motor City chain match in 15:07. Meltzer says, so not only did we just have the guys chained together, but we had 2 poles. One pole had a key to unlock the chain, and the other pole had a nightstick, which I guess is the street fight weapon of choice in Detroit. They did a few running away spots, by Styles, but he couldn't make it far. And the match was nothing compared to a usual match between these two because the chain proved to be more of a constraint. And that's really the story until this.
Here we go.
Styles gets the key. This allowed him to do a frog splash while Rhino was still chained up. Eventually he's chained to the ropes. Styles just steps out of the range of the chain and teases holding the key in his face and then hit the Pele kick. This is still getting no heat. Styles got too close and Rhino gored him, and the key that Styles dropped was still out of reach. Then referee Dave Hebner nonchalantly kicked the key to Rhino, which was supposed to be a babyface move, but instead it led to chants of "you screwed Brett" and "you screwed Rhino." Rhino got out of his shackle, set up a table to gore Styles through, but Rhino missed and crashed into the table and Styles pinned him. 1.5 is what Dave gave it. 2.25 stars is what the Torch gave him. But by God, this match is like DDP in 1995, just too many gimmicks. What say you?
Well, first off, Mr. Meltzer did a little typo. It wasn't Dave Hebner. It was Earl Hebner.
well, they're twins. I don't know if you knew that. It's a joke.
I know. How long have they been twins?
For their whole life, as far as I know.
Oh, I used to travel with a set of twins, and you'd go into a restaurant and waitress would go, "Oh my gosh, are y'all twins?" I said, "Yes, they've been twins about 3 years now." And they really, that's nice to hear. Anyway,
that's awesome.
Another little road fun story. Man, that Impact Zone, they were not happy with Big Fat Ole Guy. It's one of those momentum. And look, it was a bad taste in their mouth and say, "Oh, okay. So now we got AJ and Rhino. We don't like this BS finish." It was what you just said, layered up, way too many overthinking.
Here's what I would have liked to have seen. Not a chain match, because
a clean finish.
Well, yeah, but a chain match restricts what AJ can do. Like, why would you take out his best thing? Like, to me, that's just, you don't do that. He's got to be able to flip flop and fly. That, like, we're trying to do a big man, little man match. And one of the guys has to have, striking distance. And
yep.
But then if we're going to have poles, and I'm not a Russo hater, I understand that that's oil. It's a pole. Okay. I'm not saying that, but I am saying, what if, and hear me out. What if there were two poles, and on one side we put logic and on the other side we put reasoning, and the first person to get it has a logical finish to the fucking match. I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. You really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. So what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com. What about that?
Way over my head, pay grade. It's one of those deals where, okay, how are we going to have a Detroit chain match? Let's add another layer to it. In the context of Fat Ole Guy, Italian street fight, Bob Backlund, it was too much.
Let me try another one. We're going to do a pole match. We've decided we got to have a gimmick match. So we're going to put a pole. Okay. So there's a pole. And on that pole is a clipboard with some documents, and it's a release.
Ooh.
And the other pole is a clipboard, and it's a WWE deal. And we're going to put BG James and Kip James, and we're going to let them fight it out. See who the fuck can get released first, get rid of the piece of shit car, and get those mortgage payments caught up.
And you know what? Bob Backlund would run in and not let either guy up a pole unless you could recite the presidents.
But he signs it, and then Backlund's on Raw. And then Oily Guy does a run in.
Linda.
And Oily Guy gets the release document, and the crowd goes wild.
Wow. we're on to something.
All right. Up next is Chris Sabin and Jerry Lynn for the X Division title. And they actually get a little bit of time here, 13 minutes and 33 seconds, but the match has no heat because we've killed the crowd. Meltzer would say it was a good storytelling match where Sabin worked on Lynn's back for most of the match and it even played into the finish. From an old school technical standpoint, they did everything right, but it didn't work, but it was due to what preceded it. Ultimately, Lynn uses a TKO for a near fall. He goes for a cradle pile driver, but his back gives out from all the punishment. And then Sabin gets the pin, grabbing the ropes, old school classic stuff. He cheated, that damn dirty heel. The Observer gave it 3 stars. The Torch gave it 2.5 stars. This is what TNA in my mind was built on. When I first started watching TNA and I was making the trek to Nashville for those Wednesday pay-per-views, it was to see guys like Chris Sabin wrestle guys like Jerry Lynn in an X Division title match. This is the most on brand thing on the whole show so far for me.
Yeah. And Jerry Lynn, I think this is after he came back from a shoulder surgery. I don't know that to be, but he had injuries that would build up and Dr. Tim would help him get put back together. But, it was Jerry Lynn was a founder, if you will, of the X Division. And I say that with Jerry knew how to tell a story in that style of match. Man, when was that? The Independent Hall of Fame when I was hearing about Sean Waltman and Jerry Lynn, and you think back how far they've been telling stories with high flying matches. But Jerry was, a lot of glue in the early days of TNA and even in this event.
Next up is James Storm teaming up with Jackie Moore to take on Petey Williams and Gail Kim. Dave actually didn't like this one as well as Wade did. Dave gave it 1 3/4. Wade gave it 2 stars. The crowd was dead. Meltzer said the women's stuff was okay, but it was far better than the stuff you would see from the ladies in WWE. Ultimately, Moore is going to DDT the referee Rudy Charles, and they set up doing the double team death sentence on Kim when Chris Harris, wearing an eye patch, makes the save. So what do you think, man? Chris Hero. That's kind of fun.
Chris Harris.
Yeah. You know what I mean? My bad. Chris Harris from America's Most Wanted. If you're a longtime TNA fan, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. And it was, again, the pendulum of all wrestling versus all story. You can just tell all throughout this pay-per-view, it swung way too far to story, too much story. But Gail and Jackie in a mixed tag, they, it's just these early vibe TNAs, and you could see sort of, okay, that mixed tag was pretty good, and they were really with the girls, and take a little bit of this here, a little bit of that there. But all in all, it wasn't one of our red letter days, but the building blocks, if you will, still the overall challenge of producing a pay-per-view with no social media and a 1 hour weekly show, it's just damn tough.
So just to add some context to the Chris Harris thing, this is before he left and went to WWF. On January 11th of 2007 here, he did a quote unquote kayfabe sit down interview with Mike Tenay. And he's really giving the impression that his wrestling career is over, and we don't see him again until this pay-per-view. So this is kind of well done that, now we're, I don't know, as Bruce likes to say, we're getting a fresh paint of coat, because clearly James Storm is doing his own thing, but there's so much story there. If you were a longtime TNA fan, you really like that. Oh man, this will be interesting. Sort of like Sean and Marty or whatever.
Yeah. And I think we were wanting to make them kind of at their insistence, and probably a lot at Russo's insistence. Let's make them 2 individuals.
Yes.
That's the road we were heading down. But yeah, go ahead. I don't know if you were asking me a question, but yeah, we were trying to make them 2 singles.
Next up, it's Abyss and Sting in a prison yard match. The match started in the back of the building where fans turned away watching on screens. They got to see it live, while the fans in the arena had to watch it on screens. Abyss threw Sting into a heavily gimmicked dumpster. Unfortunately, the camera shot was too good and you could see it. In the ring, Sting used a barbed wire baseball bat and Abyss juiced his arm. Sting took Mitchell's belt off his pants and hit him with the buckle and whipped him, and then Mitchell juiced. Abyss would then smash a police light that was used as a gimmick, and Abyss tried to put Sting into the cell in the middle of the ring which was the object of the match. Think like a casket match, except with a cell in the ring. And Sting stopped him from shutting the door. This was not as good as when The Undertaker does the same spots. Abyss pulled a barbed wire board from under the ring. Abyss then used a black hole slam and took Sting's mask off. Sting didn't put any makeup on, so he just looked like Sting. Although the storyline of wearing the Abyss mask I thought was because his face was burned by a Mitchell fireball. They probably forgot about the fireball. God knows I tried to. Sting came back from a scorpion death drop and tried to put Abyss in the cell, but he got away. And it ended with a barbed wire board elevated and Abyss climbed on the cell. Sting got underneath him and powerbombed him onto the barbed wire board and put him in the cell and locked the door. The story here is that this is Mitchell's temporary blow-off. The idea is to bring him back in a few months with a new protege who would feud with Sting. Good match. Much better than they've been having. 3.25 stars is what Dave gave it. 3 stars is what the Torch gave it. A prison match feels like, this is going to be a miss, but at this point, it might be the best thing on the show.
You can never, ever fault Chris Park for his work ethic.
No,
I mean, you know, and you know, I think you casually mentioned that we started the match outside, and that's where, you know, the people, and I know it's 1,000, 1,100, 900, whatever at this stage of the game. I think our maximum we got to was 11 or 1,200 when we really built in zone bleachers way up there. Anyway, full house, people waiting outside to get in. Started out there, gave those people a little something extra. If you're going to watch an entire pay-per-view out in a hallway on monitors, we're going to give you something out there. That's sort of inside baseball, story behind the story on why we did that and worked their way in. Look, worked hard trying to give, you know, Sting and Abyss aren't going to go out and give an Austin Star match, and they're not going to go out and give a mixed tag. It's trying to be diverse, and they worked their ass off and put on to me, a hell of a performance.
Next up, our main event, Christian and Kurt Angle for the NWA title. Samoa Joe was the special guest enforcer. They go 19 minutes and 2 seconds. Angle guaranteed before the match that he would win the title. So of course he did not. Christian retains, and Meltzer would say, you know, Cornette has zero power, because the Cornette booking rule of thumb is if the babyface either guarantees, promises, or swears to God on something on TV, then he must deliver. Ultimately, though, that's not what happened. Angle puts Christian in the ankle lock. He's tapping, but there's no ref. The finish sees Christian get the pipe and hit Angle. Then he uses the unprettier for the fall. And after the match, Steiner puts Angle in the Steiner recliner and uses a pipe to choke him. Good match, but every TNA NWA title match has the same referee bump spots because they're easy pops. But in this bout, they felt old. They had the crowd at the end, which was no small feat given that nobody else could get them. But this didn't have what I'd call the usual main event heat. So Meltzer gives it 3.5 stars. The Torch gives it 3.25. So Dave liked this one just a little bit better than Sting and Abyss. But again, there's outside interference with Tomko, and there's pipes and Scott Steiner, and it's just it's a mess, man. What'd you think?
The cumulative of too much story caught up with these guys. They worked their ass off. I remember, and look, Meltzer's comment about Cornette and the babyface, you know, guaranteeing. I come from the same. I remember cringing, and I'm like, why did he say that? Where'd that come from? I don't believe Vince Russo believed in that philosophy. I just think you don't need to put yourself. I don't think it hurt I think it hurt Kurt. You can wordsmith it differently. You know, I'm going to go out there and beat his, whatever it may be, but just to comment on that. But Christian always worked his ass off, and obviously Kurt did too, and they would get him every time. But you know, you just look back on this show, and the pendulum swung way too far to storytelling and needed to deliver more on payoffs and finishes. And we gave them finishes for the most part, but like you just commented, belts and run-ins and layers, and just a little too much, just a little too much. And again, I'm going back to sitting in a room saying we've got to deliver a 3-hour show and with storyline and driven off of a 1-hour show, 4 1-hour show, and one being preempted. How are we going to get there? Oh, we'll gimmick them up. That isn't the solution, but we certainly tried.
So here we go. We should, I guess, reflect back now. I mean, even Meltzer says he didn't think the show was as bad as the negative feedback that came in on his poll, but he did say the Hemi angle is really what ruined the show. I mean, it hurt the show the most. Mm-hmm. Is there a place for that creative anywhere? Do you think? Is it, I mean, maybe it's not on pay-per-view. Is it TV? Is it a house show, or just does it not belong?
You know, and I don't know if you're specifically saying unplug this segment, put it anywhere. Certainly can be. I feel like the execution was atrocious. I didn't go back and watch this. It certainly could play probably a little better on TV, but if it's going to be on pay-per-view, do it quick and as a transition. And I'm not saying we gave it a lot of time, but look, we're armchair quarterbacking it. So it could be on a house show. It could be on a TV. It could be on a pay-per-view, but regardless of where you put it, if you don't execute it right, it's definitely going to fall flat. And I'm not sure with this whole creative that anybody could have executed right. It was just bad, all rolled into one. Bad execution, bad creative, and had no placement whatsoever in the wrestling industry.
So that's it. Here we go. It's in the rearview mirror. Lots of DQ finishes, lots of outside interferences. Maybe the prison yard was the bigger draw. Maybe there's too much story, as you said. But it is the story of Against All Odds 2007. Overwhelmingly negative, only 19% thumbs up. But what's not negative is what we're talking about next week. We've gotten so much positive feedback as we march down our story of the creation of the USWA. I think we're ready for, I think maybe like part 3 of what we're doing here. But man, I was actually out of town this past weekend and ran into a few different folks who had just recently discovered our podcast. And they told me the ones they love the most are the ones where you're talking about the old territory days. So we're bringing you some of that next week right here on My World.
Oh, and if I remember correctly, earlier today when I was just a little hungry, now I'm starving, but earlier today I was just a little hungry, and you said April 1st is going to sell out. Did you say that kind of
April 1st is going to sell out. It'll probably sell out this coming Monday when the third man is revealed. And I'm telling you, it'll be on every news site. It'll be in every news cycle. We're going to take the internet and we're going to put it in our pocket for a little bit on Monday because this show's going to sell out. Now you can fuck around and not get your ticket and then just, grab your ass with both hands next Tuesday because it's going to sell out. You need to go get your tickets right now at supershowlive.com. The third man will be revealed next week. And this is not an April Fool's joke. It is not who you're thinking. It is not Bruce Pritchard. It is not Jim Ross. It is not Tony Schiavone. I'm not going to give you any more hints, but it ain't who you're thinking it is. And he's going to be on stage. Oh, I said he. Maybe I've said too much. Go
Conrad?
to supershowlive.com.
Have you ever interviewed this person?
Nope.
Okay. That's just a little teaser. That's just a little softball I threw you, Connie.
It's not who you're thinking it is. Go pick up your tickets right now. Supershowlive.com. Get the VIP. You will not regret it. Supershowlive.com. And hey, stay tuned. We might have a whole bunch of more live shows to announce because right now, do you hear that in the distance? You may have to take your headphones off, Jeff. Do that. Do you hear that in the distance right there?
That's my stomach growling.
No, that's your email blowing up. jj4jarrett@gmail.com. Yeah, we got live shows coming your way, especially if you've got a minor league ballpark. Podcast at the plate, jj4jarrett@gmail.com. Of course, he is at Real Jeff Jarrett. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. And we, of course, can be found on Twitter at MyWorldPod. And we'll see you next week right here on My World.
Peace, my friend.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.